Well, I think Michael Scott may need to be fired because I don't know if he really knows what his job is. He does talk shit about people behind their back.
That's harsh words for Michael Scott. Luckily, he's already made his run. You know, he's in and out. He already took the money and ran. Hi, I'm Josh Owen. As the owner of a video marketing company in New Orleans, I've been on the quest to learn everything I can about marketing. Everyone has a different style, different strategy, and a different experience. Is there a wrong way to do it? A right way to do it? Let's find out together as we make marketing make sense. What's up, everybody? We're back at another Make Marketing Make Sense episode. I'm here with Blair Broussard.
Hey,
How you
Josh.
doing, Blair?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, I usually say, you know what company you're for, but today you're representing yourself. Is that correct?
I am.
Yeah.
I have a company called BB Squared Consulting, founded in 2023.
I love it.
So I call myself a corporate comms fortune teller and culture ringleader. That actually, I know.
So sassy. I love that.
Super sassy. But what I actually do is strategic communications and change management consulting.
Awesome. Love it. Well,
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, throughout all that, I feel like it's all important that we talk about today, the importance of communication and how that helps build a successful business.
Yep. Excited to talk about it.
Love it.
Can
Well,
talk about it all
first of
day.
all, I think, within all that, I know through talking together about it, you have a certain methodology that you kind of work within. What is that methodology?
Yes, so it's called Radical Candor. And it is a communications methodology created by a woman her name is Kim Scott. It's a book. She works in the technology industry. She's worked under Sheryl Sandberg. You may have heard of her before.
Okay.
She's worked at Facebook and Google as
Is
well.
she related to Andy Samberg?
It's a great question. I wonder.
Find out more next time.
Yeah. So essentially, radical candor can be explained best by what it's not, right? So you can think of radical candor as a grid. And if you have like the four corners of that grid, right, the right quadrant is radical candor, which is caring personally and challenging directly, right?
Gotcha.
That's what it is. Sounds simple enough, right?
Okay.
But then you're like, well, what does that really mean exactly?
Right.
So that's why it's best explained with what it's not. So radical candor is not your boss who is obnoxious and aggressive, right? We've all, I think I'm sitting in this room, we probably all like, oh yeah, I know that person.
I hope it's not me.
I hope it's not you. Awkward. But we all have that person that's, they think that they're going to challenge you directly, but they certainly don't give, a crap about you personally. And they put the fear in you, and that can work. That can absolutely work in terms of performance and engagement, but it can only work for so long, right? And then you're like, I'm out of here, right? What else it isn't is manipulative insincerity. And this one's probably like my least favorite example because this is, if you experience this in the workplace, it's just so toxic where they act like they care and they really don't, and they will not challenge you to your face, so they'll talk about you behind your back. So they're just like, yeah, that person sucks.
Wow.
Right?
I know some Southerners like that. But I'm from the South too. Let me tell you, it's just like,
right?
I grew up in it. That's all I'm saying,
Yeah, bless their hearts.
Yeah, bless their little
That's
heart.
exactly manipulative insincerity in the workplace.
Oh,
bless her little heart.
Yeah.
And then you have ruinously empathetic, which is you care and you don't challenge. And honestly, this is where most people fall in the radical candor quadrant when they first start managing people and communicating with them, is that they don't want to be that obnoxious, aggressive boss, right? Because they've all had that person. So they're like, I don't want to be like that. I want to be nice. I want them to like me. And they end up not giving feedback and at all. And so in the book, the author, Kim Scott, gives a great example by saying, she had this really good friend who was working under her as a writer, I believe. And if I get this story wrong, don't hold it against me. But essentially, for 3 months, this person was turning in materials and deliverables that were subpar. And Kim loved this person as a human being, and they were friends outside of work. And instead of saying, this is not great work, she just redid the work herself. And 3 months later, she was forced to fire this person because of their work. And whenever she addressed it with the person, he was so shocked that he was fired. He had no idea it was coming.
Wow.
And so when she explained the reason they had to let him go, he just said, why didn't you tell me?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
why didn't you just tell me my writing wasn't
Yeah.
good and give me a chance to improve
Yeah.
and help me? So, anyway, it was one of those, after hearing some of these examples, it was just like light bulbs off in my head, and it made me kind of really realize how important this is and how many people don't do it at all.
I mean, it seems like it makes sense. It's like a no-brainer. Like, you know, do it, right? But like, how do people know, first of all, that to do it, and then second of all, like, how do you know that it's the right fit, you know, going to be the right fit for you?
Well, I think how do you know how to do it is a great question. I think you start to realize, I'll give you a real life example of how radical candor came into my life.
Oh, great.
So previous to having my own consultancy, I was running an agency for 10 years, locally called ARPR. It's now called Alloy. And so probably 5 years into the 10-year tenure at that agency, we started having some really interesting issues with employee retention and engagement. And we ended up having to terminate people for it wasn't a layoff, it was termination and en masse because of some toxic.
En masse?
En masse.
Oh, no.
For some toxicity happening within the culture. And it was the hardest thing I ever had to do in my career. And honestly, I'd still say it's probably the hardest thing I've ever done. And professionally, it was rough. Yeah. And so it was at that pivotal moment in our history that we said, okay, we need to figure out why this happened and how to make sure it never happens again, because this is so painful. So digging in, somebody actually gifted me the Radical Candor book and a couple other leadership books. I dove into, our retention rates, and I did some one-on-one conversations with our employees, and it turns out some of the crux of the issue was hiring, which that's a topic for a different day, but
shelve that there.
Parking lot. But the other thing was middle management and the lack of managing and coaching and leadership that was actually happening at that level. And because of that, sort of the toxicity that was starting to happen because of the lack of that leadership. And so we figured out the problem. We had to figure out the solution. And it turns out that after we read the book and started digging into it, that I realized this happens everywhere. I had a lot of friends that were entering middle management around the same time in different companies and organizations. And no matter how big or small, it seemed like the issue was middle managers were not getting the training they needed and felt empowered enough to care personally and challenge directly, which was, and all of that was long-winded to say, oh my God, they're not radically candid. They don't know how to be, and they don't even know if they can be.
Yeah. That's wild. It's like, but how do you, I guess because this didn't work out, like, was there a time where you started to implement it and then you start to see these like sweeping successes from it all?
Sweeping success is a little.
You gotta get that broom out and start sweeping it around,
just really, really fast. So this takes time, right? It's a nuanced approach. It's changing people's behaviors, soft skill behaviors, right? So this isn't just like you have a new process, put some check boxes.
Right.
This is really saying it's okay to challenge your boss. So radical candor is very interesting, right? And the fact that it's not a top-down mandate. It's up, down, and around, right?
Oh.
So the way you start it is really getting the buy-in from your team, and that is letting them be candid with you, giving you direct feedback, right? Yeah. And the way you do that, because you're not going to have somebody sit down and say, all right, I'm your boss. My name is Josh. Tell me all your problems, right? I'm not going to sit there.
I shouldn't have done that. Uh-oh.
I'm not going to sit there and say, I trust that my boss isn't going to fire me after I tell him he's a terrible boss, right? So what you have to do is build trust. And how do you build trust? by caring personally, right? So it is a fine line and it's incredibly nuanced. So you have to figure out, how do I build trust with these people? How do I show them that I do really care about them and that they won't be faulted for challenging me directly?
Gotcha.
And once they figure out that they can tell you as the leader of the company, right, their qualms and feedback and their pain points, and you allow that, then they can feel like, I can go back to my direct reports and say, let me build this trust.
Right.
Let me mimic what was shown to me. And then let me get feedback.
Right.
And I know that if that feedback is negative, that's okay. It is not an attack on me personally.
Right.
And that's something that Radical Candor does say is, it can never be about the person. It has to be about the work. And oftentimes I realize that line can be a little blurred, and it's your job as the leader, the manager, coach, whomever, to make sure you're making that distinction.
Right. I mean, I think it's so interesting because these are like such intangibles in the sense that like they are important things. Like, I mean, what you're describing to me is, hey, you know, you want feedback for your business in order to be a better business, and people that are doing their jobs day to day are the ones that are going to give you the best feedback. But in order to get that feedback, you need to have the trust that you have with them to be able to receive and achieve that feedback level with them. But in order to do that, you need to have trust with them.
Yep.
And
It's like a chicken or an egg.
it's a chicken egg situation you got there, you know?
I would definitely start with the care personally part. That's where you got to start.
And it's all about, and like, you know, how do you build that trust? You know, I think a lot of people are scared as far as like, you know, if you're a boss, like you don't want to seem like you're too close, like buddy with them, because you have to keep that boss relationship.
Very true.
So how do you keep that, like, I'm your boss, but I also want to be close enough to where you feel comfortable giving me feedback?
Well, I gotta talk about this forever because we're human, you know, and I think as, you know, generations shift in terms of who's, you know, the leaders of a company, I think it's okay to get a little personal these days. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I do think we have this generational divide where when millennials entered the workforce, the boomers were still in charge, and it was very much like personal life stays at home, and when you walk through this door, it's work only, right? And that has certainly shifted in so many ways because of the way we work and how we work. We work at home, you know, most of us, or a lot of us still. I know people are going back to the office too, but we work at home. The past 3 or 4 years, you're seeing inside of everybody's house, their kids, and maybe some things you didn't even want to see. It's a blend now.
Yeah.
So, yes, the line can be fine, but I don't think there's any rules of, you know, this is too personal. I think life and work is intermixed, and the more you get to understand people's challenges outside of the workplace, right? Like their kids, or their, you know, taking care of elderly parents, or what they're really proud of, or their hobbies. Like those are human ways to connect that you should be connecting with.
Right. That's awesome. I mean, like, are there systematic ways that you can, like, improve, like, step up in your business to kind of build this out?
Well, I mean, I think one thing that's often overlooked that is so important, and people just make excuses that they don't have time for it, is weekly one-on-one meetings. I mean, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. I don't think they need to be any longer, and they do not need to be status checks on exactly what this person is working on. They need to be really about the struggles, challenges, and kudos, and no order in particular, about this person's work life and even personal life if they want to share.
Gotcha. And like, I think, you know, about that, some people might be hesitant to like have so many meetings. Like, do you feel like these, like, you know, some people will say like, well, you know, I don't want to have too many frivolous meetings. Like, our time is precious. Like, is that, you know, warranted, or is this that important to make sure that like, hey, the more you are in tune with your team, the more like you're going to improve as a team together?
If you want to build trust and you want to utilize Radical Candor, you absolutely have to have these meetings. Now, I realize meetings just to meet are an issue. Eliminate some of the other ones that could have been an email. Do not eliminate this one. If it has to be biweekly, sure, cool.
Gotcha. That's awesome. I mean, like, you know, I think a lot about it is, you know, obviously there's all kinds of different scenarios that run within that, you know, platform of like, you know, I think, yes, have these meetings, that's important. But a lot of people, to get that buy-in, is going to be, well, how is this going to improve my business for the long term? And like, for you to say that, like, what would you say to those people that like have their businesses now, and maybe maybe these problems haven't gotten big enough to like where they have that big toxicity, like fire everybody moment, but maybe they're like on the edge and they don't know it yet. Like, what do you tell them, to start looking inward, or also like, to buy into this concept?
Yeah. So, well, for the record, it wasn't fire everybody.
Everybody
just want to clear
must be
that.
fired.
Clear the air on
you're
that.
right.
But listen, here's the deal. What's better than being reactive? It's being proactive.
Right.
So I guarantee you, every business, especially once you hit 15, 20 people. I've sat down with a lot of agency leaders over the past 8 to 9 months, and they all have similar problems, right? And it's not to the point of toxicity that I explained, but it is to the point of I'm experiencing some serious disengagement. People keep coming to me complaining that they're overworked. People keep, so they're disengaging, or they're just complaining, or their quality of their work is down, or I'm having retention issues. Like, each one of those tells me something about the fact that radical candor isn't fully in place there, because they cannot tell me the why. Well, why are you experiencing engagement issues, or they're complaining? And a lot of them are they are frustrated because they feel like, well, I am sharing the vision and I am doing all these things. What they're not doing is engaging in radical candor.
Gotcha. That's all. I mean, so when you, in those scenarios that you're describing where they start telling you all these problems and you're asking these questions, what are some of your, I guess, diagnosis, what's the word I'm looking for? When you have a diagnosis and then you give them the pill, what's the
the prescription?
What's your prescription?
The remedy?
There you go. The remedy. What's your prescription for their illness in that scenario?
Well, I mean, I do explain to them the radical candor model, and I explain to them why I think they're failing or where I think they are. So a lot of times it's, you're in this ruinous empathetic state,
Right.
or and we talk through kind of how to get out of it. I mean, I should be getting a kickback from book purchases of Radical Candor, because buy the book, like
Buy that
genuinely, audiobook, the actual book, just read it, and fully understand the concept. And then I realized that it is a little overwhelming on where to start, but I've actually been doing a lot. I've been in a change management course this week, actually.
Wow.
And so it's really interesting to think about it through that lens as well. So when you are implementing something like this that is nuanced and a little esoteric, I think what you need is champions.
Yeah.
Right? You need somebody within the organization, or somebody that's going to come into the organization and really believe in this and help set it up for success.
Yeah, because it sounds to me like it's almost like the thing where it's almost too hard to just implement yourself, because you almost need an outsider looking in saying like, hey, are you actually doing this right? Like, you need someone to actually look at you with a microscope and tell you that
you need
you're,
somebody to
where
be
you need
radically
to adjust.
candid with you.
Oh, look at that. Come on down to Candid Land, because we're getting radically candid up in here. Oh. Anyway, well, yeah. So I mean, I think that's the gist of it all, right?
Yeah.
Is like coming down to that. And I think when you're dealing with other companies, what would you say? I mean, obviously, yes, that's a good endorsement, but when is the right time for a company to bring someone like yourself in?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if again, you want to be proactive versus reactive, but I also understand you have, especially when you're an early stage company, you have a lot of limited resources. What I would say is have an understanding of it yourself. But when you get to that point that I just described of about 15, 20 people, and you're looking to scale, you're looking to double, triple size,
Right.
within a year or two, that's the time you really have to think about investing in
Gotcha.
outside resources.
Awesome. Well, good to know. Well, awesome. Well, and I think that's good to know for everyone else. I think that's when we'll now move into our next segment. So, okay, perfect. All right, so we have a next segment, and our next segment is a segment that I'm just going to call "What's Up with That Boss?" So, so I'm going to talk about we're going to talk about just fictional bosses and how they could have been.
What's up with that boss?
We can talk about fictional bosses and how you would assess them on a radical candor stage, and like what we might do differently.
Okay.
So the first one is Michael Scott.
Oh,
How does Michael Scott
gosh.
rate for you as dealing with from The Office, dealing with
Michael
radical candor?
Scott is What a what a great question. I think he probably falls between ruinously empathetic and manipulatively insincere.
Oh my goodness, Michael Scott, how could you?
I know.
Wow, what could he do better? What could he be doing?
I think Michael Scott may need to be fired because I don't know if he really knows what his job is.
Wow.
So it's really hard if you don't know
That's
what
harsh words for Michael Scott. Luckily, he's already made his run. You know, he's in and out. He already took the money and ran.
Outside of him, right. Outside of him being great and making us all laugh, I think he doesn't know how to challenge directly because he doesn't quite understand his role nor anyone else's in the office.
Wow.
So that's really hard.
Yeah.
I do think he cares.
He does care. So that's important. That's part of it, right?
But he does talk shit about people behind their back.
Some particular people, at least, too. So, well, what about Leslie Knope from Parks and Rec?
Oh, I need a new example. I didn't watch Parks and Rec.
I was just going to see, because I feel like she's got some good stuff going on. Another boss. Anybody got another boss?
Give me a boss.
Give me another boss, because I was leaning on two bosses.
I know.
Fictional boss. Here, I got one. What about Dumbledore?
Oh.
From.
All right, I like it.
Harry Potter.
That's a great one. I think Dumbledore is pretty solid radical candor.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
I mean,
what do you say that?
Argue with me, but
yeah. I mean, because I guess like you want him to be candid, but didn't he also like not tell Harry some things behind his back? Like he was like keeping all these secrets behind him.
But wasn't that for Harry's own good?
I mean, I guess that's a good
care personally.
Oh, I mean, like, is that a part of radical candor? Should you keep things from them, for their benefit of their own problems?
I think if it's to help them help themselves, yeah, right.
Wow.
Teach
help me, help
fish,
you. You know what I'm saying? Wow.
Yeah, like you want to teach them the lessons. You don't want to give everybody the answers.
Yeah.
It's not really leading.
Wow, I guess that's true. Man, Dumbledore.
Dumbledore
you got
wins.
It. Wow, Dumbledore got it in. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Dumbledore is the boss you're looking for. So we'll be on the lookout for that next Dumbledore book that's coming out soon. Dumbledore's going to have I don't know where I'm going with that. All right, come on down. Anyway, well, you heard it here first, folks. Dumbledore is where it's at. Well, thank you so much, Blair, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Occasion. And where can people find you online in the social webs?
You can find me on LinkedIn. That's it.
Wow, mysterious.
I know, I'm elusive
at
these
Blair
days.
Broussard on LinkedIn.
Blair-Broussard.
Wow, nice. Look at that.
Come on down. Simple.
Thank you, Blair, for joining us.
Thank you, Josh, for having me.
And we'll see you all in the next one. This has been another episode of Make Marketing Make Sense. Peace out. This has been Make Marketing Make Sense, brought to you by Comfystone. If you need video content for social media, your website, or email marketing, hit up Comfystone at comfystone.com and follow Comfystone on Instagram and TikTok. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.